All right, mathematicians, today we're going to do a preview of circles. I'm going to review some definitions and some formulas that you might remember so that we can move forward during our next class. So first, here's my beautifully drawn circle, and we're going to label a few things and talk about what some of the vocab means. So the first thing, the little dot in the middle is called the center. A line that goes from the center of the circle to the edge is called a radius. The line that goes from one side to the other through the center is called the diameter. The circumference of a circle is around the outside. It's almost like perimeter, but we don't use the word perimeter when we are dealing with circles. We call it circumference. And it's what goes around the whole outside of the circle. The last term is area. I'm hoping we remember what that means, but it's what covers the surface of the circle. So now let's talk about how all these things are related. So let's start with radius and diameter. So if I want to find the diameter of a circle, but all I know is the radius, I take the radius and I double it. Hopefully you can kind of see that from the picture. You have one radius that goes from the edge to the center, and then another radius that goes from the center to the edge. So that diameter is when you combine two radii together. So let's say we know that the radius is 2. How do I find the diameter? Well, the diameter is 2 of those radii, so the diameter would equal 4. Now, let's kind of work backwards of that. Let's say I want to find the radius, but all I know is the diameter. Well, since the diameter is twice the radius, we could reverse that, do the inverse operation, and say that the radius is half of the diameter. So again, you've got your diameter that goes all the way across through the center. If you cut it in half, you end up with a radius. So let's say I know the diameter is 6. I'm going to cut that in half to find that the radius is 3. Hopefully those two weren't too tricky for you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time working on those two. But now let's talk about circumference. So circumference gets a little tricky because I can't use a ruler to measure the distance around a round object. I have to use something called pi. Pi is this lovely little symbol here, and it represents the ratio of the circumference of a circle to the circle's diameter. Any circle in the whole world, if you take its circumference, so around it, and divide it by the diameter, the distance across, you will get this value of pi. The tricky thing about pi is it doesn't repeat and it doesn't end. Okay, so think back to our rational numbers and our irrational numbers, we have a non-terminating, non-repeating decimal. So that gets tricky. On your calculators, you'll have a pi button that you can use, or a lot of times we just estimate it to make our lives easy to 3.14. Okay, we need to understand that there are more digits that come after this, but for our purposes, we can go ahead and estimate this so that we're not stuck here all day trying to figure it out. So if I want to find the circumference of a circle, I take pi, this value up here, and I multiply it by the diameter of a circle. So let's say that I know the diameter of my circle is 10. So I'm going to plug those values into my formula. So for circumference, I've got pi, which is 3.14, and I'm going to multiply it by my diameter, which is 10. When I multiply those two numbers, I find that my circumference is 31.4. I'm going to leave the value of pi up there because we need it for one more thing that we're going to do. To find the area of a circle, we take pi, and this time we multiply it by the radius squared. So be careful, circumference uses our diameter, but when we're dealing with area, we want this radius but we also have to square it. Luckily, we've worked with squares and cubes already, so you guys know exactly how to square a number. When I have, let's say this circle has a radius of, let's say it's 4. I'm going to plug my values that I know into my formula. I have area equals pi, which is 3.14, times my radius squared. I know the radius is 4, so I'm going to go ahead and write that with my exponent of 2. Now, chances are you're going to plug this right into your calculator and get your answer, but just to make sure we're on the right track here, I'm going to rewrite my pi value, 3.14, and I know that 4 squared is 4 times 4. So I'm going to write down my 16 here, just as that reminder. When I multiply these, I find that my area is 50.24 units squared, or square units. Okay, a lot of times you're going to be told your radius is 4 inches, and then your area would be 50.24 inches squared. So just keep those units in mind as well. We're going to continue to practice how we find circumference and area. Go back and watch this if you need to, but we will keep using these same formulas and practice it during class.